That's cute. I know good and damn well you don't think you scare me, standing here with that bank robber wig on. Either set it off or take it off. But pick one. And make sure you pick right. Because before I turn your daddy every which way but loose tonight, I'll gladly knock your head between the washer and the dryer. This is Bedtime Stories, Grown-Up Edition, Genesis, bonus episode 4, part 2. Because you all have been so patient with this whole process of my DIY project, I'm going to do something special for you. Bonus episode 4, part 2, is dedicated to the ladies. And to honor each of their perspectives, I'm going to give you some selections from Zanaya Monet, the AI artist created by Talisha Nikki Jones. When we left off with Star, she was in New York, pretending to be Eve and laying a trap for Taryn Cato and his daughter, Hanifa.
Didn't tell me what a real man sounds like, so I fell for the ones that lie just right.
And on Wednesday afternoon, she had Taryn Cato right where she wanted him. They were on the phone and Star had said, "I am not interested in being any man's dirty little secret. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt and a shot glass. Oh no, I'm not trying to become a part of your family, marry you or nothing, but I'm also not going to be running around the boroughs, Jersey, and Philly with a man who I not only can't take home to meet my mother, if I wanted to, but I also can't meet his adult daughter, who I'm pretty sure is used to her pops having his way with younger women, using and tossing them. Especially when you're talking about extending this whole little situation to after I go back to school." Since Taryn and Eve had gotten back to the city from their little Jersey trip, Taryn had been laying it on thick. Not only did he want them to go all the way, but he decided that Eve was right up his alley and somebody that he wanted to keep around, at least into the near future. Eve had already made it clear that the only way that she could move around at her leisure once she got back to school was if somebody other than her mother was footing the bill for her education. And Taryn Cato, who initially thought that she was trying to tap his pockets, had changed his tune after their little rendezvous in his chauffeured car on their way back to New York. He'd wanted to play in the back seat of that car, and Eve had shown him that she could play too. So now she had Taryn's nose wide open. She'd used the guise of family obligations to avoid seeing him again. And now she told him that the only way they'd be able to continue this whole little escapade was if he provided her with the opportunity to meet his adult daughter, Hanifa. And Taryn had been adamant that that was a no-go. After that little situation with Talia, Salima, back in the day, he'd learned the hard way not to introduce his little yeah-yeahs to his daughter. If Eve wanted money, she could have it. She wanted to go on elaborate trips, they could go. She wanted to see how he lived, where he lived. She could see all that. Hell, she could meet his friends, his employees, but his daughter was off limits. And the only explanation he gave for his no was that he and his daughter had an understanding. She didn't introduce him to men unless and until they were a boyfriend. And he didn't introduce her to women unless he planned to make them her stepmother. And since Hanifa was almost 20 years older than Eve, no matter how long Taryn and Eve kicked it was highly unlikely that they'd ever get down the aisle. As a matter of fact, he wasn't even interested in taking anybody down the aisle. And for Eve's part, she'd made it clear that she wasn't interested in going down the aisle, especially not with a man old enough to be her granddaddy. But she wasn't going to be ducking and dodging his daughter either, being quiet when she called on the phone, hiding in another room when she came by the house, pretending like she wasn't with him or didn't know him, when they were all patronizing the same establishment. Hanifa and her daddy had been known to frequent the same spots, which was understandable, considering the life that her father lived. Keeping her out of harm's way meant that she was also limited to the restaurants, bars, and clubs that had made the short list for the Cato organization. And since her father was still in them streets and taking women to the sheets, he was still known to frequent bars and clubs. Clearly, neither he nor his daughter had any problem with the fact that they was partying in the same environments. And he figured that if that was the case, she should at the very least meet and be familiar with the woman that Taryn claimed he wanted to keep around for a while. So when Eve laid down her conditions, Taryn said, "I just don't understand how you think that's gonna work out. You're nearly 20 years her junior. If she gives you a negative reaction, I'm sure that's gonna have an adverse effect." Eve cut him off saying, "I'm not new to this. Yeah, I don't typically date men as old as you are. But according to my therapist, I'm attracted to older men because my daddy wasn't ish. And apparently I also get a kick out of putting people in uncomfortable positions early and often so we can get it out the way and so we can get to the good part. I'm not about to let you take me down, then we run into your daughter somewhere, she have a bad reaction, and then you dead the whole situation. If that's what it's going to come to, then it's going to come to that in advance of me giving you this wetness." And Taryn Cato relented. He scheduled a meetup with his only daughter and his jump off, playing right into Salima's plan. And as expected, the meetup did not go well. While Eve, Star, was seated in Taryn Cato's office. He left her there for a few minutes so that he could go and let his daughter in. Star knew that he didn't need to do that. He was trying to prep her for a meeting that he already knew was going to go south. And while he was gone, she made quick work of placing a bug in an inconspicuous location and taking an infrared photo of the keypad on Taryn Cato's office door. That photo would be analyzed. The tech team would have access to the code that Taryn used to unlock that door every time he entered and exited. And when Taryn and Hanifa walked in, whatever Taryn had said to Hanifa to prepare her for the little meeting, clearly going in one ear and out the other. Because as soon as she looked at Star, she said, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. This little girl's still in pull-ups. And this who you want me to meet? You got another little girl who got your nose wide open. That's what we doing, Pops? She gonna suck you dry, empty your pockets, and leave you sick." It's written all over her. And Star said, "Oh, that's cute. It's nice to meet you too, Hanifa. My name is Eve, and you might want to play nice, because you don't want to be the reason why you're the only one calling your daddy tonight." Hanifa said, "Oh, hell no. You still on this kind of time, Daddy? They're getting younger and younger, and you clearly getting stupider and stupider. Let me guess, she different from all the rest." Terrence said, "Yes, she is." And Hanifa said, "And if you believe that, I got a popsicle stand on the corner of Utah and Hell with an oceanfront view that I can sell you for the low, low price of the free 99. Since you so committed and invested in fantasies, if you don't die on top of her, you're going to end up bankrupted. And then I'm going to have to kill her. So I might as well just go ahead and beat the snot out of her and send her out of here with a tail between her legs. And then all this bull crap now." The Star said, "That's cute. Taryn, get your daughter. Let me tell you something. I know good and damn well you don't think you scare me standing here with that bank robber wig on. Either set it off or take it off. But pick one. And make sure you pick right. Because before I turn your daddy every which way but loose tonight, I'll gladly knock your head between the washer and the dryer." Hanifa said, "Oh, baby girl, I gets active." And Star said, "Well, then activate, you transformer looking ass." And before she could finish, Taryn Cato dragged Hanifa back out of the room. When he came back, he said, "What the hell was that?" And Eve said, "Oh, I give as good as I get." Her little diaper comment was unnecessary. Taryn said, "I told you." And Eve said, "And I told you all about the things that I've been through. All about the niggas that played with me and my time, who played with my heart. So what you gonna do, Taryn? Obviously, your daughter not feeling me. It's over with, or we gonna give it a go." Taryn said, "I don't understand what you're looking for." Eve said, "I'm looking for somebody that's not gonna play games, that's not gonna switch up on me when the pressure is hot, because I'm young and he's not. Somebody that can handle me and all my issues. And I don't think you could do that. Take me home." Taryn said, "Wait a minute, that didn't go well, and my daughter started it. But I tried to tell you that it wasn't going to go well, since I already anticipated it. I already told her that I'm rocking with you, no matter how she feel about it. I'll take you home, but only so you can get ready for the night. And I'll talk to my daughter, because what I can't have is you two going to blows, if and when you two run into one another again." Eve said, "So I ain't ruined everything?" Taryn said, "Nah, baby girl. You just proved that you need somebody to help you with your daddy issues."
Never showed me what to lose or what to defend. So I chase love with an open wound, looking for something I was never introduced to. Mama did her best, but she can't teach what it feels like when a father speaks.
Meanwhile, in Denver, True and Bosch had been having a rather difficult day.
They told me to be strong, but I ain't brave. I'm just good at pretending I'm okay.
They'd continued their ongoing game of Go, but their usual camaraderie, their laughter and conversation, had come to a dead stop. True had put Bosch out of her bed and out of her room early that morning when a dream had woken her up inconsolable. And finding Bosch still in her bed hours after they'd gotten it in and she'd fallen asleep just added to her upset. She'd said, "Why are you even still here? Get out. We're not spending the night together. This ain't that." Bosch said, "How many nights do you wake up like this? And why in the hell would you want to be alone?" True said, "Every night." Bosch said, "But I thought you was doing better." True said, "Why? Who told you that? I've learned to hide what I can't heal. And that means that I don't want to share it. So get out, Boschian." Bosch crawled out of the bed, grabbed a pile of clothes that he left haphazardly on the floor, walked out of True's bedroom and slammed the door behind himself. And when he did, True fell apart all over again. And as she was accustomed to do, she talked to both God and her unborn son out loud. She said, "Baby boy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry your father's not here. God, why? When Bo died, you at least let me feel his presence. You made it clear that he was still with me. No, I couldn't see him, but I could at least still feel him. And when my daddy died, you let him come to me in my dreams. But you took Wood and left me in Genesis with nothing. Nothing. Not a bird on my windowsill, not a kiss in the wind, his scent in the breeze, or his voice in my dreams. And I don't understand why. Did I do something? Did something happen that caused his soul to completely leave me? Why I can't feel him, Lord? I just need to feel him. And then, like she was often known to do, she grabbed her laptop, went to the electronic journal that she'd been sharing with Miss Charlotte, and typed it all out. All of her thoughts, all of her feelings. The only thing she left out was her newly begun sexual relationship with Bosch. But she left it all on the floor. Typically, she held back because she knew that Miss Charlotte had to be hurting too. And while Miss Charlotte had asked her to share everything that she thought, felt, and experienced, some things just weren't for public consumption. And some things were definitely not for the mother of her deceased fiance and the father of her unborn son. But she hit submit without even thinking about it.
Grief ain't loud, it's quiet in your chest. It's waking up crying, no reason, no rest. They don't
When the latest journal entry came through, Miss Charlotte was in the guest house in the bedroom where Big Wood was staying. They were waiting for his physical therapist to arrive, and Big Wood, in his usual impatience, had already started exercising his weak arm while he was laying in the bed. So when Miss Charlotte got the alert that there was a new journal entry, she pulled it up and started reading. And seeing a look on her face, Big Wood said, audibly, "What's up, Ma?" And hearing her son's voice in a full sentence, be it 3 words or not, sent Miss Charlotte over the edge. She was already super emotional about Big Dro's death and Big Wood's current set of circumstances. So reading the journal entry and hearing her son say a few words sent her over the edge, but it also put a fire in her. She said, "Maribel told me that she's getting ready to go back to Denver. True needs to be examined every 2 weeks now. And from what I just read, it's clear that she needs to hear from you." Big Wood used the tablet to ask his mother to read him the journal entry. And Miss Charlotte said, "I can't do that, son. There's no way she would have written all of this if she had any idea that anybody other than me was going to read it. But True doesn't just need to know she's not alone. She needs to know that you're still with her, even if it is in spirit." And when they finished concocting the plan for Big Wood to make his presence known, the physical therapist arrived, and Miss Charlotte decided to leave Big Wood in his capable hands. She left and headed over to Q and Angela's house. When she got there, she looked at Q and said, "You need to have a conversation with these doctors. You need to find out just how close we are to my son being able to travel." Q said, "Aunt Charlotte, it's really not safe for anybody in the world to know that Wood is still alive. He can't protect himself. We got too many plans in motion." Miss Charlotte said, "Nobody else needs to know that he's alive. I'm sure you have at least one somebody that you can trust to help us orchestrate this. And I'm sure that your Uncle Artemis will move heaven and earth to get Big Wood to Denver safely. I'll go with him. Hell, you know how to fly them planes. You can get us there. And that darn Angela is good at this kind of stuff. Between the two of y'all can come up with a plan to get Big Wood out of that house and on that plane. But this has gone on too long. And True is unraveling with my grandbaby in her womb. I might not have had the spiritual experiences that you've had, and therefore I have a different perspective on life after death. But it's clear from that journal entry that she submitted a little while ago. Like you, she's had some experience with those who've passed on, and she has not had any with my son. And that's leaving her confused, hurt, and stretched emotionally in ways that you'd never understand. You're a father, a good one, but you ain't never been a mother. Discuss it with Angela. I'm sure she can help you understand. When Miss Charlotte made her exit, Q went and did just that. When he walked into the guest room where Angela was laying in the bed, she was on the phone with Maribel, but she looked up at him and smiled from ear to ear.
Muscle sitting right under that white tee. And when he wear them gray sweats, Lord help me. He got this way of walking through the door, like peace just pulled up and hit my floor.
She said, "All right, Maribel, we're going to head that way now." She ended the phone call, looked at Q and said, "What's up?" Q said, "No, you tell me what's up. You tossed and turned all night long. After that love-making session we had, you should have been dead to the world." Angela said, "I had a real hard time getting comfortable. I've been having contractions, but..." Q said, "Why is this the first time you telling me?" Angela said, "Because they weren't that bad. They were like starter contractions." Q asked, "You was in pain when we was making love?" Angela said, "No, I was just a little uncomfortable. But it was worth it. Believe me. How about you go ahead and change and grab the hospital bag?" Q said, "Change for what?" Angela said, you're not going nowhere in those gray sweatpants. Please don't play with me. Q chuckled and said, so Maribel wants us to head to the hospital then. Angela said, yep. Looks like it might be time. Q said, you nervous? Angela said, how could I be? I got you. Then Q went and changed, grabbed the bags. And while he was gone, Angela started making the phone calls. When she got to Mom Brenda answered and said, let me guess, it's time. And Angela chuckled and said, yes, ma'am, it looks like it. Mom Brenda said, okay, well, I'm going to wrap up here with Chantal and be ready to go. Come scoop me.
You only knew the nights I cried, praying to God, asking him why, smiling in the crowd, but broken inside, carrying a weight I could never describe.
Over at the main house, Mom Brenda and Chantal were having a come to Jesus conversation. Miss Bernie had still not been back to work with the children, so the parents had been taking turns filling in for her. And that day was Anya's turn. So while Mrs. Ali, Anya, Melissa, and Michael were wrangling all the younger children, Mom Brenda and Chantal were discussing Chantal's life, her plans, her dreams, her future. And like she was known to do, Mom Brenda had read Chantal like a book when Chantal told her that she believed that, like Paul, it was best that she lived single, that it wasn't in the cards for her to have a husband and children, that she was born for ministry. But she was severely confused about why God would send her into the world and into the family that she was born into. Her father was a kingpin, he was dead. Her mother was a career mistress, she was dead. And her brothers were following in her father's footsteps. She had one sister who was a lesbian, and she was sure she couldn't be going to heaven. And another sister who was a downright hoe and looked like she was following in her mother's footsteps. And damn near her whole family was involved in illegal and immoral activities. And she was just trying not to get drugged down into the mud with them. Because you roll around with pigs and you bound to come up dirty. So Mom Brenda said, you're going to have to forgive, baby. And Chantal said, I've already forgiven my father and my mother. And I'm working on forgiving my siblings for the ways that they contributed to our childhoods being a mess. Mom Brenda said, oh, baby, not them. You're going to have to work on forgiving God, yourself, and your previous pastor. Chantal said, forgiving God and myself? For what? Mom Brenda said, as dedicated as you are to Christ, you mad with him, baby. And that's understandable. Believe you me, he knows. When Chantal went to protest, Mom Brenda said, don't even waste your breath, baby. I done been around the world and I. You might be able to fool yourself, but you can't fool me. And you can't fool God. When the woman with the alabaster box busted open and washed Jesus' feet with her tears and the oil that was in that box, and then dried his feet with her hair, and the Pharisee whose house they were in asked Jesus why he would even commiserate with a sinner like her, Jesus responded with a parable. He asked that man whose debt was bigger, when a man who had loaned one man 50 talents and another 500 had forgiven both of their debts. And the man rightly answered that the one who'd been forgiven the 500 talents had been forgiven larger and should therefore be more thankful. Jesus told him that he was right. And while that Pharisee thought that the woman was the one who had had a bigger debt forgiven, Jesus laid out all the ways that the Pharisee himself had sinned. Because in comparison to the woman, he paid Jesus in dust, invited the Son of God over, failed to greet him, wash his feet, or kiss his cheek. And the woman he was looking down on, the one who he and everybody else saw as a sinner, had done what none of them had done. She'd honored God. She was humble enough to know that she needed a savior. And she came to a place where she wasn't even welcome, where she knew she'd be looked down on and belittled. Got down on the floor, humbled herself, and cried enough tears to wash a man's dirty feet. Not any man, though, the King of Kings. You, my dear, are like that Pharisee. You've worked so hard to be upright, to be righteous and good, and you failed miserably. And you can't even see that because you're so busy judging other people's sins. And you're mad with God because he didn't give you an easier, better, more righteous life and family. And until you forgive him for that, and forgive yourself for your own shortcomings, for your inappropriate feelings towards your pastor, you are never going to be able to walk in your assignment. God doesn't send a woman like you to a family like this if there isn't some work that he expects for you to do there. And since you don't have a heaven or hell to put anybody in, I assure you that assignment is not judging their sins. You asked me why I was here with this family when the tie that binded me and Angela together is long gone. I buried my son years ago. And I told you I'm here because this is where God assigned me. I'm not just here because Angela and Q have my grandbabies. But so you know, all of these children are my grandbabies. And this family is mine. My assignment isn't to change how they show up in the world. My assignment is to show up like the light and salt of Christ. To pray for them and with them. To love them into their destinies. Hold them when they're hurting, wipe their tears when they cry. I almost died, baby. And God sent me back right here. And now, here you are. You got a Bible in one hand and a broken heart in the other. You're going to have to put one of them down.
I lost friends, lost love, even lost myself. Had a Bible in my hand, but still needed help.
At the same time, across the complex, Miss Bernie was getting ready to head to her meetup for Operation Reborn. She had the doll, she had a chauffeur, she had a recording device, and a pistol. And at her door was LJ. He said, "Can I come in? We need to talk." And inside, he told Miss Bernie, "Angela's headed to the hospital. She's probably having the twins today. She didn't call you because I told her that I was coming by, and I'd be the one to let you know. Miss Bernie, this family needs you. Don't be a hero. Stick with the plan. Do what needs to be done. Nothing more and nothing less. Angela has asked me to be on the scene today, because the only way that she's going to be able to focus on herself and those babies is if she knows that I'm close by. Don't make a decision that's going to put you and me in danger. Because if you do, you're going to have to see my wife. She's hell-bent on keeping me alive and making another baby." The night before, when LJ and Regina got home, Regina was still fussing at LJ about keeping himself out of harm's way. And when she was satisfied that he was committed to not taking too many risks, she told him two things. One being that for all of his bluster and his tough exterior, she could see that this life was taking a toll on him. And she could appreciate the fact that he felt the need to keep Angela safe, to help her accomplish all of the big plans that she had for the 5 families, and to repay Manny's kindnesses and Angela and Q for all of their support. But she needed him to remember where home was, where he was safest, and what was most important in the big scheme of things. And she also wanted him to know that she was having baby fever. She said, "I feel like Lena needs a sister. She got a big brother and a little brother. And before these eggs of mine become poached, I think we should give it one more go." LJ said, "Seriously? You want to start over at a time like this? What, you and Angela got some competition on who could have the most kids? Because she is well ahead." Regina said, "No, but everybody pregnant but me." And at first I was glad about that. But God has given us a second chance. He's given us more time. And the last time we found ourselves in this place, he gave us Anders. You needed something to look forward to then. And I think you need something to look forward to now.
You've been caring too much for too many days. Eyes low, breathing slow, barely speaking. And I know, baby, I know you're barely sleeping.
Meanwhile, in Paris, Sincere had just broken the news to Saint that they were going to have to put their mission on hold. Sincere had been summoned to Puerto Rico, and not by Manny. Sincere said, "So apparently Natalia's father wants to meet with me in person, and he's not taking no for an answer. I don't know what he could possibly want." Manny said that it ain't optional. "So I gotta go." Saint said, "How long are you gonna be gone? We got work to do. And we barely been here a good 3 days. If that was the case, I could have stayed in Texas longer, spent more time getting to know this shorty that I'm kicking it with. And you could have spent more time getting to know Natalia so that you'd be prepared for a meeting with her pops." Sincere said, "We've been keeping in touch. I owe her a couple of calls, though, but she been kind of busy herself, so I'm sure she's good. You was missing in action the whole time we was in Texas. I figured you'd got your fill from old girl." Saint said, "Nah, I don't move that fast. Hell, I'm surprised you ain't crawling the walls." Sincere said, "I got what I needed when I was in Miami, so I'm good." And Saint just shook his head, because he knew all about Natalia and Sincere's conversation about the importance of abstinence to her. And when Sincere said that he'd be gone for at least 4 days, so their play would need to be paused, Saint came up with an idea. He and Tori had been emailing a whole lot, and when her last email came in, she said that she was going to have a few days off. When he said that he wished they could see one another, he was surprised when her email response came right back, saying that she wished the same thing. So when Sincere said that he was leaving Paris, Saint sent Tori an email back, inviting her to meet him in New York. He'd never told her exactly where he was, and since he didn't want to compromise his mission in Paris, he decided to leave and go to New York for a few days. And her response came back almost immediately, this time with her phone number. Saint used a backup satellite phone to make the phone call. As soon as Tori answered the phone, she said, "What's up? You trying to fly me out?" Saint asked, "Is that what you need?" Tori said, "No, but I'm trying to see where your head is. I'm not the kind of woman you gonna fly out and get in her drawers." Saint said, "And I'm not the kind of man that's gonna fly you out and let you get in his. I told you, I'm on a job, but I got a few days. And while I can move around freely, safety is always paramount. Now, I'll gladly handle your travel arrangements, for safety purposes, and you won't be traveling commercial. Tori said, and with the things that I have going on with work, even though I have some free time, I can't travel commercial. Look, as long as we're on the same page, we're going to use this time to get to know one another better, have some fun outside of the bedroom. Then I'll gladly handle my own travel arrangements. Saint said, bet. So you know, though, I can't wait to see you again. And Tori just smiled, thinking about the first time that she'd seen Art and how hard it would be to keep her hands off of him.
It was a crowded room, noise everywhere. But somehow time slowed down when you were there. I swear the lights hit different when you smiled. And I ain't believed in fate until that night.
Meanwhile, Natalia.
I show up whole, show up ready, but you treat me like I'm temporary. You love the idea, not the death, but baby, I'm not, and maybe I'm the step. Don't treat me like a plane you ain't sure about.
Who'd gotten word from Liza that both she and Angela would be offline for the day, had already held her morning meeting with her staff and given them their marching orders. The only staff that would be physically going into Vibrantly You were those who were responsible for managing the shipments. And according to Liza, over the next 2 weeks, Vibrantly You would be shut down. This wasn't abnormal. It was something that they did twice a year for inventory, planning, and retreat purposes. The only products that would move in or out of the Vibrantly You warehouse was those associated with ongoing subscriptions that were due to be refilled and the ingredients that they needed to balance out their inventory for the next 6 months. And that didn't require a full house, nor did it require that the customer service team be fully staffed. So barring any emergencies, Natalia was free to do whatever she wanted to for at least the next week. She'd expected that what she would be doing with her free time was reading the book that she and Sincere were reading together, developing questions for them to discuss, and getting to know him better when he had time to converse with her and answer her questions and pose his own. But Sincere had already dropped the ball. The few times he'd called since their date 5 days before, the book reading activity that he proposed had clearly been the furthest thing from his mind. And by the time Monday came, he'd been moving different. At first, she thought it was because he was on some assignment in Paris, and so that had taken up all of his time. But when she deduced that he'd made a pit stop to his hometown, she realized that the changes in the sound of his voice were most likely the result of him getting topped off. And while she'd chosen not to question him, she was certainly the type of woman who trusted her own intuition. And her intuition told her that he was going to play in whatever ponds he could find until she was ready to put out. And while he said that he was serious, he didn't even know what being serious meant. So when her phone rang and it was him on the call ID, she sent that nigga the voicemail. He was going to have to figure out that she wasn't somebody he could play with. And trying to find a space in her life was not going to be no tryout.
Don't keep me on a bench just to run your route. You got one shot, better make it count. Cause baby, this heart don't